Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious Trump, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of the third president in history to be impeached to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
And I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments. The logical fallacy we're looking at this week is shifting the burden of proof, also known as onus probandi.
So there's a lot of crossover here with argument from ignorance.
Right.
As you'll remember, I forget which episode it was now, but go back and check out argument from ignorance.
Yeah.
I think it might be 17 or 18. And yeah, that one basically is saying you can't prove I'm wrong, therefore I'm right.
Yeah.
And so essentially, I mean, that's a kind of very short version of argument from ignorance. But with this one, there's a little bit more of a kind of challenge to prove that the person is wrong. It more usually takes the form of, if you think I'm wrong, prove it, rather than I am definitely right because you can't prove I'm wrong. If you see what I mean?
Right.
They're just saying, no, I am right. I know I'm right. I don't need to prove myself right. You need to prove me wrong, basically. So with Trump, actually, you might be surprised to find this doesn't come up that often. And the reason for that, I think, is basically because he just lies about what the proof says. So he pretends that he's been proved right already, regardless of what it actually says. So there isn't any need to challenge the other person to prove him wrong, in any way. He just says no. The evidence. It's like the read the transcript thing. He's kept saying read the transcript, as if it proves him right when it absolutely doesn't.
Yeah.
So.
Or the Mueller report,
totally exonerating him
from collusion. Well, it didn't. Yeah, no amount of saying it over and over again will make that true. Yeah.
So when you just lie about what the evidence says,
because you can't. He couldn't say with the Mueller thing, well, show me the proof. Show me the evidence. Well, there it is. Yeah. Well, perhaps that's why he doesn't use it, because the evidence against him is so often blatantly against him that he can't go, you go and prove that to me, because they just will. So he just
so easy.
He just pick up a fact and show it to him.
So our first example is a tweet that actually he retweeted. It wasn't from him, but it was after journalist Jeff Zeleny talked about the fact that there was no evidence for his claim that millions of people fraudulently voted, obviously for Hillary. Yeah. And so he retweeted someone who said, at Jeff Zeleny, what proof do you have Donald Trump did not suffer from millions of fraud votes? Journalist, do your job. So this person on Twitter is telling the journalist to go away and prove that Trump didn't suffer from millions of votes of fraud, more fraudulent votes.
Yeah,
which isn't how that works.
You've got
the thing about the burden of proof.
You've got to say, hey, okay, here's the fraud that went on, and here's my proof to show that. Yeah, you can't make an outlandish statement and then go, prove that I'm. Can you prove otherwise?
So the burden of proof basically is on the person who's making a claim, and it becomes a little bit difficult to figure it out some of the time, because sometimes a negative claim, like you didn't have lots of people fraudulently voting for Hillary, can sound like a positive claim. If you're saying you didn't do that, it is a negative claim, but it kind of sounds like you're making a claim,
right?
But it's the burden is on the person who is making the claim, which in this case was that people voted fraudulently, to prove it. And the reason for that basically is that anyone can claim anything. I can say I'm the reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln, and I obviously should be the person to prove that.
Because, well, I've often wondered about that beard that you occasionally sport.
If you require everyone to prove every claim wrong in order to not believe them, then it would take an enormous amount more time, and it's basically practically usually impossible to prove a negative. If, for example, the claim was that there are aliens out there in the universe, the only proof you need is to find one.
Yeah.
If you claim there are no aliens in the entire universe, you have to go everywhere in the entire universe.
Right.
Which
and
is
then go see
a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even then, they could have moved while you were over in one kind of quadrant. So it's basically practically impossible. And even when all your claims are Earth-based. So
yeah.
So the burden has to rest with the person who's making the claim. And as Carl Sagan said, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The more outlandish your claim, the more evidence is required to back it up and to in order for people to be expected to believe it. So our second Trump example comes from a press conference that he was doing with Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But it was around the time that Pompeo and the Trump administration were kind of trying to say that Iran were doing bad things and that it was kind of maybe going to become necessary to go in and sort them out. And supposedly US shot down a drone, an Iranian drone, and Trump had this to say in the press conference.
We took down one of their drones. Instead of saying, yeah, that happened, they lie. They say it didn't happen. So we have, there's a lot of proof. It's called, take a look at it on the ocean floor. Just go down there, take your scuba gear and go down there in the ocean. One of you would do that, I know. But we took down a drone.
So the proof is you go and get some scuba gear and go and search the floor of the ocean around Iran for a drone.
Yeah, because there's a lot of water there, big water. Yeah, ocean water.
Ocean water.
Yeah. And then he puts that challenge out, and then also scoffs at them, the gathered journalists, by saying, "Well, yeah, one of you would do that." Kind of as if, one of you is going to go and do that. And then, well, yeah, of course we are, because you've not. You've offered. Well, no, they're not.
No one's.
No, that is true. Yeah.
No.
So I don't know what he's doing
the thing
there.
Is, it's in a normal presidency or with a normal person.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that far fetched. To believe that the US military had shot down a foreign drone over presumably American or international airspace. Yeah. The difficulty is that he lies so frequently and so easily that when he says something like this and the Iranians say, no, they didn't, that's not true, it really is harder to know who to believe. It's not as simple as, well, our president is saying it and the foreigners are saying something different, so we should believe our president. No, but it's like kind of maybe the balance has shifted.
The bit when he does offer proof, like the hurricane is going to hit Alabama or wherever it was, and the proof,
the Sharpie,
the proof he offers is an illegal defacement of a government issued document. And that's the proof he offers. And so he kind of makes the extraordinary claim, offers extraordinary proof insofar as it's not a proof at all. And it just compounds the lie. So even in those occasions when he doesn't shift the burden of proof to the people listening to his lies, he produces this proof and people just stand there slack-jawed going, what on earth are you doing? You're just a child with a crayon.
Shifts the concept of proof rather than the burden.
It's because he says a thing that makes it true. That's it. That's enough for him, isn't it? He is, after all, the king of the universe. So whatever he says will manifest itself. Either that, or he's been lots of self-help group things where they say you can manifest your own future by using these particular powerful words, like bigly. And then he just makes things happen. When whatever he says, that's what happens.
Yeah. So with that example, Trump is doing a variation where rather than just saying, well, prove me wrong, he is basically telling other people to go and do the research, go and do the go and find the proof. I'll tell you where it is. I'll tell you kind of vaguely, you go over there, but you need to do the work. It's like telling them to do the thing that really the person who is making the claim should be doing if they want to offer proof. And that is similar to our third Trump example, which is actually a Trump supporter who I had a bit of a chat with on Twitter, who
right. The red mist descended, didn't it?
I responded to something that I think Bill O'Reilly said about the Ukraine situation and how basically he was saying that these people, they're just against Trump. That's the beef they have, Bill Taylor and so on. They don't actually, they just disagree with his policies. I pointed out that actually what they disagree with is extorting foreign leaders for personal gain. Yeah. And this guy called Scott Horn, he said, this happens with all political leaders, but let's forget or forgive past presidents, but hold Trump accountable. Slightly sarcastic there. And a brilliant person called Myth Debunker asked him quite reasonably who and when. Yeah. So basically saying, if you're making this claim, if you're saying this happens with all political leaders, who to give us the proof, give us some sites. His response was, quote, several articles on the net that discuss in great detail on presidents using their position to influence changes in foreign relations, policy changes, trade changes, personal gains, and etc. The key to understanding is reading opposing views on both political sides. So nobody has any problem with presidents using their position to influence changes in foreign relations, policy changes, and trade changes. It's the personal gain thing that is the issue. Yeah. But his evidence that he offers for his claim that it happens with all political leaders was several articles on the net.
And I notice he's put capital letters for several and articles.
Yeah, several, like A.A. Milne. So I said, seriously, your evidence is several articles on the net without citation. Don't you think it would be sensible to point us towards the ones you consider good evidence? If I'm wrong, I want to understand the truth, but I'm not going to make your argument for you. So the most obvious thing to do, if you have evidence, if you are aware of articles, is to present it. Is to say, look, this is something that backs up what I'm saying. If you tell people to go away and find their own evidence, even if I was trying to steel man him and think, okay, I'll try and be intellectually honest, I will assume that this person has seen evidence, and I will go away and try and find it. The chances I'm going to find the same thing he's talking about are very slim. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, it's as vague as several articles on the net.
Even Wikipedia there would be kind of in brackets citation needed at that point, wouldn't there? To back up the fact of that this has happened been done by several presidents over past presidencies. You kind of go, yes, your bracket citation needed. It's not an unreasonable thing to say, is it? So what was his reply?
His response to "Don't you think it'd be sensible to point us towards the ones you consider good evidence?" was, "I have a full-time job, so I don't have time to do your research for you."
Oh wow! So he's done it twice, almost, hasn't he? He's got he's got to go. You've got to do the research, even though I've said there are plenty over there, which implies that he's done some research, which is the basis of his claim, or the basis of why he's said what he's done, is based on some research. And then now he's saying, I've got a full-time job. I haven't got time for that. Well, obviously his job is as full-time as Trump's.
He's claiming at this point in the conversation that it is my research to look for the articles he is citing to back up his claim, which I've disagreed with. There you go. That's shifting the burden of proof.
That's great.
And now is the time, I think, for Mark's British politics corner.
Well, it's been very difficult this past couple of weeks to listen to anything that's being said during the election, because I'm afraid my partisanship is showing, but also it's just a car crash of gish-galloping bullshittery from all sides when when asked questions in order to substantiate various claims. But I did manage to find one that I'm holding up to scrutiny as possibly a shifting the burden of proof. So the first example is Boris Johnson on the 29th of November, and he's on the LBC radio show in the UK, and it's they streamed a live interview with Nick Ferrari, who we've had before on the show. And he's taking questions from callers, and this is the one that you might have seen examples of in the press, where some 20-year-old quotes of Boris Johnson saying the children of single mothers will mug you in the street and they're feckless and awful and not going to amount to anything. And that's come back to haunt him. Him being the father of several children, we know not how many.
He doesn't know how many.
He doesn't know how many. He's not willing to tell us. But he's fully involved in their lives. Yeah, right. So they're not being brought up by single mothers. Anyway, what this leads to is the usual dissembling set of falsehoods propped up with bullshit Latin and cutesy down-home epithets like soup to nuts and oven ready to show he's just an ordinary guy. But there's these bits in there that...
Is soup to nuts a down-home epithet? Because surely... How working class is multi-course meals that start with soup and end with nuts?
I think I came across that first in Grapes of Wrath or, Tortilla Flats by John Steinbeck. Okay. And I think that they're very down home and cutesy. So, but I have no evidence of that. I'm going to have to go back now. You need to go do the research. Go and read Tortilla Flats or Cannery Row. Anyway, yeah, no, point taken. And this interview contains the math conundrum that the Tories put out when they said we're going to create 50,000 new nurses, which actually contained 19,000 existing nurses. So various people have, questioned that math. So this leads on to, he's asked by Nick Ferrari about the numbers of new hospitals that the Tories have promised in the manifesto, and one would assume that the burden of proof is on Boris to say what the number is and why it isn't actually, say, 40.
40 new hospitals will be built as a result of the decisions.
No, but how can you say they're not new hospitals, are they? This has been looked at carefully.
Yes.
They're existing sites that will admittedly benefit from millions of pounds of investment, but they're not new hospitals per se.
There'll be new buildings.
But again, you misrepresent the figures. Why do you continually do this, Mr. Johns?
Because I think people obviously try to turn things around on us and say that we're not making the investments we're making. These will be huge investments in the NHS.
No one's disputing that.
They will lead to
but you've seen the research that I've... There are four new sites. No. The others are revamps.
Yes, but
brilliant work as it is.
Okay, well, let me give you an example.
We're not going to play the example because it's just more bollocks like that. Interesting when he says there are 4 new sites, and he says his instant reaction is to just say no, with no evidence at all. He just says no, and then Nick Ferrari says, there will be investments, and he goes yes. So it's just the main burden of proof I think in there is that he's shifting the proof to the people who are obviously trying to turn things around, to prove that they are A, not turning things around, and that B, the Tories are not making these investments. So I think he's kind of, rather than providing the proof by saying, okay, here are the figures, here are the planning things, this is what's going on. And he just says, why do you continually misrepresent the figures? And his reason is because other people turn it on its head and say that we're not doing it. So he's kind of shifting the burden of proof to the evidence to show that the people who are turning things round are turning things round. And that they are... You're not convinced,
I haven't pushed back on one of these for a while, but I'm not convinced completely that that's shifting the burden of proof. I get that, yes, it is his burden to prove that that they are opening these hospitals, And he certainly deflects and probably is a red herring or something like that, maybe, when he's saying that other people try to claim that they're not doing the numbers they say they're doing, because they're definitely not doing the numbers they say they're doing. It's disingenuous at best to say that people are changing turning the numbers around on him. Yeah. Like, basically they're reporting the real figures. Yeah. But I'm not quite sure that reaches that it should be their burden.
Oh, okay.
Or pushing the proof onto them to say that you need to prove me wrong.
Okay, so this is my second attempt then to get one past the scrutiny committee. It's so a little earlier in the month, on the 20th of November. So this is following the publication of the manifesto. Arch expert had enough of her. So, our friend of the show, Michael Gove, the oily, self-serving, amoral propagandist. Boo. He was, he's the pantomime villain, isn't he? Was interviewed by Channel 4's Kieran Jenkins. So this is after the launch of the Tory manifesto. Basically, he is asked the same question as Boris, which is, why should we trust your word?
We have your word that it won't be extended, not that it couldn't be extended. And of course, your word was also that Boris Johnson was not fit to be Prime Minister. Then you served under Boris Johnson. Your word was that we didn't vote to leave the EU with no deal. Then you became the Minister for no deal. Can people trust your word in this election, Mr. Gove?
Well, that was a good speech, and I'm sure it would go down well on any election platform.
These are things that you have said, are they not?
Well, they're things that...
I'm quoting your own words at you.
No, you're not. You're making a polemical argument, which you're very good at.
Your own words. And I think
no deal, as someone who was a journalist in the past and wrote polemics and then became a politician, then of course you're well on the way to going down that route.
What are we supposed to do, Mr. Gove, except for trying to hold you to account?
Yes.
Based on the statements that you've made with your own mouth.
Yes. Well, I'm always happy to answer any particular questions. I'm also always happy to admire a very good speech such as the one that you gave. So I don't know quite what your question was, but I enjoyed the speech. So what was the question?
Just brilliant, isn't it? I mean, it's just horrible.
Was he in a barn?
There's cows mooing in the background. I think it was a visual attempt to link the Tories with a progressive agricultural policy. So they just shot him against cows giving birth in the background, that kind of stuff. Either that, or he's just. Literally bullshit is coming, across into the shop in the rear. So my this kind of I'm hesitating to use the word tentative right there. See, I think what he's doing is shifting. This is kind of the end of an interview where he set up the argument that Kieran is a polemicist. He's a left-winger. He's touting this particular left-wing opinion merely by asking him to comment on some objective facts. So I think he's shifting the burden of proof to Kieran to say that he isn't a polemicist. And moreover, Gove can ascertain his view. So he's saying, well, that's a very good speech. You are obviously, it's kind of an electioneering hustings kind of speech, and he can ascertain that without providing any evidence, and therefore Kieran is besmirched with bias when he asks for evidence. So he's saying, well, what are we supposed to be doing? We can only hold you to account by using the very words that came out of your mouth. And then he says, oh, yeah, well, it's a very pretty speech and I'm very happy to answer questions. Well, you're not. So he's trying to, I think he's trying and failing, because Kieran won't fall for it, to say, okay, prove to me that you're not holding a left-wing view and that the questions you're asking me are biased and opinionated because of that left-wing view.
Yeah, I'm continue to be unconvinced at the moment. But yeah, he basically, he just said, ooh, you should be a politician. Yeah. Instead of answering the question. Yeah. Basically all he did was just kind of ignored the fact that he'd been asked a question. He denied the fact that the quote came directly from him.
His own mouth.
But yeah, I didn't hear a requirement for Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, an implication of the journalist having something to prove, perhaps, but yeah, I'm
all right,
not there yet.
Okay, well, let's try with this short one then. So in here is I'm sure is an implied request for proof, which handily gets kind of rebuffed. So it's only a short clip. Jo Swinson, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, was interviewed by Emma Barnett on BBC Women's Hour today, the 6th of December. And she's asked about 4 Liberal Democrat members who made complaints at various stages about the behaviour of Lord Renard, who, whilst he was the chairman of the Lib Dems, and whilst Jo Swinson was the Women and Equalities Minister for the Lib Dems. And at that time, she was reported to have not done anything about it, in fact, to have gone to ground.
I took action to protect women who had come to me and talked to me about very concerning experiences.
When you were Women and Equalities Minister?
No, this was in 2007. Right. It was a long time before
I'm talking about when you've had power.
Yes, and those women, if you speak to those women...
I've interviewed a few of them.
Indeed, and I think they will tell you...
See, I think there, where she gets kind of she gets a little bit confident and says, I think, if you speak to those women, so she's kind of shifting the burden of proof. She's going to go, right, okay, you're saying these things, and then you need to go and speak to these women in order to get that stuff. And then, of course, the presenter just goes, well, I have. Well, because she would have, because this woman's out. And she has.
She's a journalist,
And she's interviewed, and I've heard the interviews. And if Jo Swinson was worth a thought, she would have listened to the bloody things as well. But she hasn't, and it's just superbly rebuffed. And there's the counter. In my seeking for a counter, there it is. You just go, well, I have, and actually, she's asserting that with no evidence either, other than you're in the Women's House studio.
She could provide it immediately.
Just go, well, here it is. There was this person here, that person. Yeah.
I will definitely give you that one. That is a she's telling her opponent essentially in the argument that she's the one who needs to go away and find this information. Whereas,
and it's brilliant. She doesn't even get to finish the sentence before the presenter goes, well, I have. And she goes, well, indeed. And then she doesn't know what to do. It's an awful car crash of an interview, but it's deeply satisfying. Wouldn't take much to prove you wrong. Wouldn't take much to prove you wrong. Got my mind made up and my high heels on. No, it wouldn't take much to prove you wrong. No, it wouldn't take much to prove you wrong. There you go, continuing our slightly country and western theme from the last episode. That's Sheryl Crow there with "It Wouldn't Take Much to Prove You Wrong."
Wasn't it Cher last episode?
It was, yeah.
Slightly. Is Cher country and western?
Yeah. What is she then? Prove to me she's not. Prove to me
pop,
she's...
I'd say. I'd say she's had her country and western periods, but
right.
I think pop probably during the If I Could Turn Back Time. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I'm no music aficionado, so
I think it's the bottle guitar thing in the slide guitar in Turn Back Time that did it for me. Okay. There isn't any. Yeah.
In Fallacy in the Wild, we like to talk about the fallacy of the week from a non-political perspective, and our first example this week comes from Luther.
Alex, are you familiar with Occam's razor?
All things being equal, the simplest solution is the best solution.
That's right. And what that principle tells me is that the only person known to have been at your parents' house this morning, it was you.
I don't see how it's possible to arrive at that conclusion.
Well, there was no evidence of an intruder.
But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
I know, I'm making a leap. It's a little leap, though. It's more of a hop.
Is this where you ask me if I hated my parents?
It is about that time, yeah.
Did they make me a freak? Yes. Did I hate them? Absolutely. Did I kill them? No.
Can you prove that?
I can't prove a negative. can't be done.
Innocence is a negative. It's the absence of guilt.
Meaning the burden of proof is entirely yours. If you think I did this, then you need to demonstrate how and why.
No.
So this is the very first episode of Luther, the first introduction to Alice, who becomes a regular character throughout the series, and is brilliant. She's very logical.
Yeah.
And carrying on from this clip, she then goes on to further kind of destroy Luther's logic. But yeah, she points out absolutely that she can't prove that she didn't do something. You can't, it's unless you have like footage of you all day on the day the thing happened, it's really difficult to prove that you didn't do something because, you could have been doing it when someone wasn't watching you. So,
which is the whole plot for Serial, isn't
exactly.
it?
The absolutely.
Serial,
yeah. So that's the point. Is that he claims that it was her. He doesn't have any evidence because she's brilliant and didn't leave any evidence. But it's not enough just to say that it's her. He has to actually prove it. The burden of proof is on him. Obviously, in pretty much all legal cases, that is the case. When the prosecution claims someone committed a crime, the burden of proof is on them to prove that they did it, rather than on the defendant to prove themselves innocent.
Yeah.
Our second example comes from there was a debate between Christopher Hitchens and a pastor called Doug Wilson, who I can only imagine thought that he had a chance against Christopher Hitchens. And so they made a documentary called Collision. Where they were debating the existence of God or the non-existence of God. And this clip is from an interview that they did on the Joy Behar show, kind of promoting the documentary.
One of the things I would want to do is ask about where your starting point is. Who has the burden of proof? So does a Ford automobile have the burden of proof of demonstrating that there was a Henry Ford or that there wasn't? Who has the burden of proof? And a lot of this debate is actually scrambling for the high ground of who has to do the proving, who has to do the maintaining, who carries the burden of proof. Now,
and who do you think carries the burden?
I believe the one who denies the self-evident fact that God exists and created the world. I think that is the person who has the burden of proof.
You say it's self-evident?
Yes, self-evident to those
who believe.
Those who believe.
There may not be a solution to this.
I think there is one. I mean, and I can't avail myself of the almost beautiful circularity of Pastor Wilson's argument. And I wouldn't want to shirk any burden of proof or disproof, but it does seem to me that if someone says, if I don't agree with them, I might be condemned to eternal punishment, and that snakes talk, virgins bear children, and dead men walk, that extraordinary claims do require extraordinary evidence. What atheists say is not that there is no God. We couldn't possibly prove that. We say there's never been any evidence, and there's never been a convincing philosophical argument that there is such an entity. In fact, we say there is no supernatural dimension. The natural world is much more wonderful.
Yeah. Wow, yep. Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, we love him. We miss him so.
Yeah, so Doug Wilson bizarrely claims that because people who believe in God find it self-evident that God exists, therefore anyone who denies that, the burden of proof is on them to prove God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Which is not, again, how proof works.
No.
Because
the fact that and is that not also begging the question that it's self-evident that this is true, therefore you haven't got to prove it. So it's, he's maintaining that, there's the basis of his shifting the burden of proof, because he believes it's self-evident. So he hasn't got to provide any evidence, because the belief, because God himself, it's self-evident. He just manifests himself to be there. He is his own proof, but only to those people who believe.
To be absolutely clear, I edited that for time very slightly.
Right.
And so where he says it's self-evident to those who believe, he then goes on a little tangent about how in a debate between him and Christopher Hitchens, the Christians think he won and the atheists think Hitchens won. And it's like the Olympics with the Romanian judge giving a 2 and all the other judges giving a 10 or whatever. He goes off on this. It didn't add anything, so I took it out, but I don't want to kind of imply that I removed anything that was exculpatory for him.
Yeah.
And the point is that he is the one making the claim. He is claiming, as Hitchens said, all of these extraordinary things that are true about his version of God. So, it isn't on everyone else to prove that he's wrong. It is on him to prove that he's right. And Bertrand Russell wrote about something like this in 1952 when he talked about his celestial teapot, which has become a kind of shorthand for this. And he said, if I were to suggest that between the Earth and Mars there is a china teapot revolving around the sun in an elliptical orbit, nobody would be able to disprove my assertion, provided I were careful to add that the teapot is too small to be revealed even by our most powerful telescopes. But if I were to go on to say that since my assertion cannot be disproved, it is an intolerable presumption on the part of human reason to doubt it, I should rightly be thought to be talking nonsense. So, absolutely true. The point, as I said about the kind of aliens, you'd have to go everywhere in the universe to prove that they don't exist. And with Russell's teapot as a kind of analog for God, he's saying I can make this claim, and that you can't possibly prove me wrong. But it's ridiculous to suggest that you should believe me simply based on my claim without any proof. I should be required to prove that this thing exists if I claim it does, and not expect other people to prove it doesn't.
And if you doubt it...
you're being completely reasonable.
That's
the point.
But that's the thing. When you're in the system of believing in this celestial teapot and the other people outside it, even though you haven't provided any proof, all you've got is this faith in the teapot. Other people outside the system who doubt its existence, you then take them to task for being unbelievers and stone them to death and all that kind of stuff for saying this teapot is good enough for Jehovah. It is, when you look at it like that, when you take God out of the equation so that it doesn't come with all the baggage associated with it, and just say it's a teapot, when people go, oh, well, okay, well, I'm not emotionally attached to the notion of a teapot, it then shows it in a Hitchens-esque Russellian kind of way that religion is completely outside of and tries to sustain itself on the basis that it is outside of scrutiny, and to subject it to any kind of scrutiny would somehow lessen the ethereal quality of it, or lessen the truth of the matter. There is that kind of sense, isn't there, which is just preposterous when you think about it in terms of teapots. Nice one, Bertrand.
So we're gonna play fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game. I understand the game as well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for fake news, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
And of course, you realise that there's no way that you can prove that I'm not going to win, so therefore I've got to win.
I think I can prove that. Just give it 5 minutes.
Oh yeah. See, now you have the in the moment of editing this, which will be after I've answered the questions correctly or incorrectly, you will be in the position to know that. But at this very point, there's no way you can prove it. You will be able to prove it, but right now you can't. So that's I'm using a Boris Johnson splitting of hairs right now. Yeah. Okay.
So there is a theme this week, but I'm gonna leave the reveal of the theme to the end.
Oh, okay.
Intriguing. So, statement number 1. China respects us, and Russia respects us. They all respect the United States. They all respect what we've done. I meet a lot of leaders. They're great. Some of them, some I like, some I don't like. What the hell? But every one of them, they come in, they say, Mr. President, congratulations on what you've done for this country. What you've done with the economy is incredible. We have the hottest economy in the world. Think of it. And they all come in, congratulations, congratulations.
Okay.
Statement number 2. This election is about security. It's about jobs. It's about borders. It's about taxes. It's about everything. It's all about security. That's why we're here tonight. That includes our military. Our military has done more than almost any other country in the world to help rebuild Iraq after ISIS. Rebuilding Iraq. In fact, we've rebuilt Iraq as good as it is, better than most countries, better than, frankly, some countries that were rebuilding their own country. Incredible. Incredible what they've done. And really, if they'd let us alone, we'd probably still be there.
What?
And statement number 3.
Okay.
Statement number 3. They
Okay.
want to impose socialism. That's what they're doing. They want to take away your Second Amendment, take away your strong healthcare that we're making stronger and stronger every single day. By the way, nobody talks about, but we got rid of the individual mandate, the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare, where you had the great privilege of paying a fortune in order to pay a fortune to not pay for bad healthcare. That's not a very good, right? That's not a very good thing. Now, we got rid of the individual mandate. That's big.
Okay. Righto. And the theme is?
I will tell you the theme after you have made
chosen.
choice.
It's all bollocksy bullshit. It's the fact that he repeats one of the words several times in the same thing. Okay.
I'll tell you, I'll give you a million bonus points if you can guess the theme, because it's not something you can guess.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, yeah, but you're going to have to prove that. So, right. So, well, I think the third one where he goes, that's not a very good ... Right. That's because the crowds have just heard him saying Obama, and they've all gone, Ruh! So he's gone, that's not very good. And they've all gone, Ruh! And he's going, yeah, right. I think that's what's happened there. That's not a very good thing. We've got rid of the individual. That's big. Okay. We have the hottest economy to think of it. They all come, congratulations. They say, Mr. President, congratulations. What? Nobody said that. And frankly, some countries that you see, some of these things, it's not possible to write because he just goes off on one and you think, what? So that bit where he does those complete about turns, like one of the bikes in Tron that makes a 90-degree turn at full speed. That's what he does when he's talking. Rebuild after it. Rebuilding Iraq. In fact, we've rebuilt Iraq as good as it is, better than most countries, better than, frankly, say some countries that were rebuilding your own country. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. Which one's not real? Okay, I think that number 1 is the one that you made up.
Okay, so shall I reveal the theme first, or shall I reveal whether you're correct or not?
I don't know, it feels like an advent calendar, doesn't it? Should we open the one for tomorrow, or and see if it's chocolate? Or if you reveal the theme, will that make me collapse and realise that I've picked the wrong one?
No, probably not. No.
Okay, yeah, go on then, reveal it.
Okay, so the one that is made up was not made up by me. It was not sent in by a listener.
Yeah,
it was generated by an artificial intelligence.
Wow.
Called RoboTrump.
Wow.
So.
Oh, that is very cool.
This is based on a tool that was created by Salesforce to generate artificial intelligent text to basically deal with kind of customer service and sales and stuff like that as a online thing.
Yeah.
And so they invented this tool, and recently they kind of opened it up to people being able to kind of train it to speak like a specific person.
Okay.
So that you can kind of put in text that a particular person has written and it will generate similar natural language, essentially.
Yeah.
And a website called lawsuit.org thought that's fun and trained it to speak like Trump.
That's fantastic. I think I've heard something similar. I don't know whether it was from the Salesforce model, but there was a an engine that was deployed in Sierra Leone, I think, which as a kind of chat bot for people reporting cases of domestic violence. So it would use natural language, and it was much more popular than people actually. They knew that it was a chatbot, but it was yet it was much more popular than people talking to real humans, because humans are only available certain hours of the day, and there's a stigma about talking about domestic violence, not just in Sierra Leone, but that was one of the things they identified. So they had this chatbot which would speak in natural language and hear what people are saying, and provide them with contact numbers and advice and all that kind of stuff. And it is very convincingly researched, and is based on people's language patterns and all those kind of things, and and peer reviewed by the users of the system. So they and in full knowledge that it is a chatbot, they recommend changes to the way that it answers the questions. So it's just incredible that you can do that. But that's a great tool, isn't it? RoboTrump.
Yeah. So basically, the lawsuit then kind of tested 1,000 people,
right,
with 10 texts that were taken directly from Trump speeches, and 10 that they had generated with RoboTrump. And asked them to see whether it was Trump or not, basically. And people were pretty bad at it.
Wow. I'm in good company then.
Overall, people guessed correctly about 40% of the time.
Wow, that's pretty much, Well, there you go. That's
almost exactly where you are. Which means I am as good at writing fake Trump quotes as an advanced AI. I'm okay with that.
You are the deep thought of Trump quotes. Yeah.
So, with that in mind, you said that number one was the one I made up. Which of the other two are you more confident about?
Number 3, I think, because I can hear a crowd cheering.
So number 3
is the fake one.
Real.
Oh, wow.
They want to impose socialism. That's what they're doing. They want to take away your Second Amendment, take away your strong health care that we're making stronger and stronger every single day. By the way, nobody talks about it, but we got rid of the individual mandate, the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare, where you had the great privilege of paying a fortune in order to pay a fortune to not pay for bad health care. That's not a very good, right? That's not a very good. Now we got rid of the individual mandate. That's big.
Jesus,
so you're
fools.
right. There was a crowd.
Poor fools, where they're kind of going, stronger and stronger every single day. There's no cheer for that bit, where they're all looking at each other going, wait a minute, it's not. It's the worst thing ever. If we've got no money, we will die. It's not. It's not hard to work out. They're going, they're socialism. Ooh, it's kind of it's a pantomime, isn't it? It's that.
Oh yeah.
We'll set these up. Here's the villain, the big scary villain, socialism. Ooh, that's what they're doing. We'll take a Second Amendment. Ooh, healthcare. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
So you also thought that number 2 was real.
Yeah.
And number 2 is fake news.
Oh, wow.
Number 2 was written by RoboTrump.
That is very good, isn't it? Golly.
It is exactly as incoherent, batshit crazy as Trump.
That's so good, though, isn't it? That kind of you can see the thought process, or the lack of it, because it's a machine going, it's about this, about that, it's about everything, it's about that. And then he repeats security, and then he gets, that includes military. Our military have done more than any other country. And even the 90-degree turn at full speed, better than, frankly, some countries that were rebuilding their own country. Wow,
it's really impressive.
And just the sign-off line as well, which is a complete non sequitur. And really, if they'd let us alone, we'd probably be still there. What the hell? That is genius, isn't it?
It's amazing.
Golly. How do we get hold of this thing? We could get it to generate.
It would revolutionise my job.
Exactly.
Come up with this stuff. That'd be brilliant.
But we could pump out these things and then just tweet them as, you know, the POTUS spelt with a B or something. Yeah. Just send it out. And people would go, oh my God, what's he said now? Let's do it. Let's do it.
Interestingly, in this study, Trump supporters were more likely to believe the ramblings of Robo-Trump than non-Trump supporters. Not hugely, but statistically significant.
Golly.
More likely. So, which means that number one is real.
It's real.
China respects us, and everybody, Russia respects us. They all respect the United States. They all respect what we've done. You know, I meet a lot of leaders. They're great, you know, some of them. Some I like, some I don't like. What the hell? But every one of them, they come in, they say, Mr. President, congratulations on what you've done for this country. What you've done with the economy is incredible. We have the hottest economy in the world. Think of it. And they all come in, congratulations, congratulations.
So I think we have a little bit of evidence that we'll be talking about later.
Yeah.
That not everyone respects them, in fact.
I think nobody does.
No, definitely not even China and Russia.
No.
And certainly not North Korea,
No.
who have recently said that if he keeps calling Kim Jong-un Rocket Man, then they will start using dotard again. Basically. They're threatening to call him names.
Then just never going to let him into the dictators club, are they? But that whole thing, that whole run up, China respects us, and everybody in Russia respects us.
China and Russia is everybody as far as he's concerned.
Yeah. They're great to know, some of them. Some I like, some I don't. What the hell? Who are you, Billy Crystal?
Which means that unfortunately you did not get this week's one correct, which puts you at 15 out of 37, which is just over 40%, which is very similar to literally everyone else, apparently.
Yeah, under Robo-Trump's real rule. Yeah. No, not feeling so good about that now.
Welcome our Robo-Trump overlords. So it's time for the part of the show that this week at least is called The House Judiciary Committee Hearing is Not a Logical Fallacy, because we've started the next phase of impeachment. And in fact, just yesterday, Nancy Pelosi has officially asked the chairman of the Judiciary Committee and the Intelligence Committee to draft articles of impeachment. So it is pretty much a foregone conclusion now that the House is going to vote to impeach.
And isn't that because Trump kind of went, you know, if you're going to do it quickly, for heaven's sake. She'd already kind of booked the slot on CNN or whatever it was to give her little speech before he said that. But yeah, about an hour before she did it, Trump tweeted, if you're going to impeach me, do it fast. Let's get it over with, basically. Yeah.
So she was like, okay.
All right. Yeah. Let's not hang about.
Yeah.
Probably because he wants to spend Christmas in the White House. Or he's going to know where he's going to be. Yeah.
He wants to spend Christmas at Mar-a-Lago, let's face it.
Yeah.
But,
So he'll go, I'll be over there. Got to go there. And they go, why? Well, because you're not welcome in the White House. Okay, well, no, you haven't been for years. Yeah.
So last week the House Intelligence Committee reports came out. The Republicans put out a kind of pre-buttle report at first to say that it's all well. No, they didn't really even. They didn't. Conspicuously didn't focus on saying he didn't do the things he's accused of doing. That was one thing they haven't tried to do.
Yeah.
And they still aren't doing it.
Yeah.
They are focusing on the kind of process and how everyone is just against him, and how, you know, the real focus in the Republican report seemed to be basically saying that, you know, the Democrats have been out to get him since he was elected.
Yeah.
And this is just an attempt to overthrow.
Yeah.
Which if all of what they say is true, none of it offers an argument why he shouldn't be impeached. Because even if the Democrats were right from November 6th, 2016, looking for a way to get him out, they have found a way because he broke the law.
Yeah.
So it doesn't change that. It doesn't make it okay for him to do what he did. So
yeah,
it's just nonsense, basically. And then the next day, the Democrats released their intelligence report, which lays out in excruciating detail all of, it's like 300-page report, and it talks about all of the things that they've been able to prove by speaking to the witnesses, many of whom, as we've said, are not Democrats. They are career civil servants, or in some cases Trump supporters. There's Gordon Sondland, who donated $1 million to the Trump campaign, who has said, yes, there was a quid pro quo, and yes, Trump told me to speak to Giuliani, and Giuliani told me to speak to the Ukrainians and tell them that their meeting with the with Trump was conditioned on announcing an investigation into Biden. So they lay it out in great detail and quite, even just if you read the executive summary of the Democrats' House Intelligence Report, it really gives you a roadmap to show exactly what he did, how they can prove what he did, who said what, and which laws he broke when he was doing it.
Yeah,
basically, and they lay out the grounds for impeachment of obstruction of justice, obstruction of Congress, and bribery. And the Judiciary Committee, who are the ones who kind of actually make the decision to draft the articles of impeachment, now with Pelosi also kind of asking them to move forward with it, they had 4 constitutional scholars testify the other day, 3 of whom were picked by the Democrats, 1 of whom was picked by Republicans. And again, the Democrat-picked ones were very clear on what the law was that was broken, and the fact that the abuse of office, even in the absence of an actual law that was broken, would be enough to impeach, and that these are exactly the kind of things that the framers of the Constitution were talking about when they set up the possibility of impeachment. Michael Gerhardt said, if what we're talking about isn't impeachable, then nothing is impeachable. And they laid it out very clearly. And then Jonathan Turley, the Republican, kind of didn't argue much about that. He kind of focused more on saying, well, you're kind of rushing into it. You need to spend more time gathering evidence. This wouldn't have a lot of precedent, basically, for impeaching people with this little evidence, this little small amount of evidence. And there isn't precedent. There's only been 3 impeachments in history, so there is. You can't point to stuff and say, well, no one's ever done this before.
Because last time we had loads of evidence. The one before that,
absolutely.
Even more. Which is, well, the way the thing that he did that was an impeachable offence. That's he did it, and how much more evidence does he want?
But the main thing that Turley seemed to focus on was the fact that everyone's just so angry about this, and everyone should just calm down. Because, like my wife is angry about it, my dog seems angry about it.
And that's a golden doodle, and they're not angry kind of dogs. You go, what? But
so much of his testimony was focused on, can't we all just get along?
Can't we all be nice to one another?
Instead of the law aspect of it, which kind of was why they were there. And it's not helped by the fact that Turley was the Republican constitutional scholar that they chose during the Clinton impeachment process. And at the time, he was saying how the fact that Clinton had lied about having sex with Monica Lewinsky basically, if you let that go, if you don't impeach him for that, there's just going to be anarchy. Dogs and cats living together. It's just everything will go to hell, and we can't have that as a country. And now this time around, 20 years later, admittedly, he's saying, was it really so bad?
Yeah.
Just a bit of bribery.
Yeah,
Do we need to, if we impeach him for this, we've got to impeach everyone for everything.
Yeah, God, at least he didn't have sex with his secretary. Yeah, for heaven's sake. He's behaved as all he's done is sold the integrity of the US down the river. There's nothing. It's nothing. It's a mere bagatelle. Yeah.
He was an interesting witness, Turley, because I kind of got the sense that he would almost be on board with impeachment if they had just kind of gone about it slightly differently and taken a bit more time.
Right.
And he was trying to claim that this was super rushed, and they need to take more time about it. You need to let the US public kind of catch up and get behind it and all of that stuff. And actually, of the impeachments that have happened so far, Clinton's took about 4 months start to finish. This is by the time the Senate actually hears it in January, probably it'll be a similar time frame. Yeah. And the Johnson impeachment, Andrew Johnson's, was like a matter of about something like 11 days.
Wow.
From the offence being committed through to the him being ultimately acquitted. Yeah. But that was ridiculously fast. Wow. There's no question that this is rushed compared to previous impeachments. This is absolutely not the fastest in any way. And arguably, unless they rush it through immediately after Christmas, could be the slowest.
Yeah.
So,
and the whole thing about the Clinton impeachment was that the Republicans wanted it done as soon as possible. Because they're going, why? How can we be governed by a man like this? Let's get him out of office.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people like Lindsey Graham were saying, this is about cleansing the office. It's about not allowing a particular kind of behaviour or presidents to think that it's okay to get away with stuff like this. It is our job, and certainly it is seen as the job. One of the law professors said it's basically seen as the job of the House to make this decision to impeach and send it to the Senate, who will ultimately make the acquittal or prosecution decision, because it is a deterrent to presidents to behave in particular ways.
Yeah.
And it needs to be not based on absolute ironclad smoking gun evidence. It needs to be a lower standard than that, so that there isn't this kind of attempt by presidents to get away with as much as they can.
Yeah. And finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
Devin Nunes, the Republican congressman currently suing a fictional cow, has filed another lawsuit, this time against CNN, which actually exists, so that's a step up. CNN reported on the fact that the lawyer for indicted Giuliani associate Lev Parnas said that Parnas is prepared to testify. Nunes met with ex-prosecutor Victor Shokin to discuss digging up dirt on Biden. If true, this would be awkward for Nunes, given that he's the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee and just oversaw hearings about the Ukraine-Biden connection. Nunes insists it isn't true, though, and according to the lawsuit, CNN's report has caused him to suffer, quote, actual damages including but not limited to insult, pain, embarrassment, humiliation, mental suffering, injury to his reputation, special damages, costs and other out-of-pocket expenses in the sum of $435 million.
Wow.
He was already suing a fake cow. I don't think his reputation is worth that much.
Exactly. How much embarrassment do you have to suffer to be worth that much? My God, when you're suing a fake cow. The 100th anniversary of women's suffrage will be commemorated with a new $1 coin, courtesy of the Commemorative Centennial Coin Act, signed by women's favourite El Trumpo, who of course displayed his genius big brain, grip on space, reality and time. No, he didn't actually. He said, yes, out loud, I'm curious, why wasn't it done a long time ago? And also, I guess the answer to that is because now I'm president, we get things done. So he's now taking credit for the passage of time itself. This, of course, has nothing to do with anything he's actually done. The coin comes as part of the broader celebration of the upcoming 100-year anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, granting women the right to vote. Each of the participants who spoke as part of the signing ceremony was generally magnanimous, praising the bipartisan network of the commemorative effort that passed through Congress by unanimous consent. Everyone except for the president, that is. After all, he's the guy who booted Harriet Tubman off the $20 bill. Because after all, no one has more respect for women. No one.
According to a new poll from The Economist and YouGov, 53% of Republicans think that Trump is a better president than Lincoln. To be honest, I'm not that surprised. After all, Lincoln freed the slaves, so he doesn't really resonate with today's Republican mindset. But some of the other numbers in the poll are more interesting, like the fact that 94% of Democrats think that Lincoln was a better president than Trump. What the fuck, 6% of Democrats? Lincoln versus Trump. What are you smoking? And can I have some, please?
Just as we suspected might happen, Trump is looking around for someone else to throw out of the flaming dumpster of who did the thing he's being impeached for and into the direct path of large, sometimes yellow, public road transportation vehicles. Good old face like a soggy crushed toilet roll tube. Rudy Giuliani is being slowly distanced from Trump, who now says, I didn't instruct Rudy to get Ukraine's president to announce he's digging dirt on Biden, by saying, you know, Rudy, he has other clients. Other than me, he's done a lot of work in Ukraine over the years, all of which flies in the face of Giuliani's testimony that he didn't go to Ukraine but got all the gen in the US. When liars who lie for liars get lies told about them to discredit the lies they've told about the liars and make them look like liars, I, for one, wouldn't blame Rudy for leaving like the lone wolf agent that he seems to be being painted as, packing up and seeking the peace, quiet and stability of rural Ukraine. They have nice neighbours too, very up on US politics. He'll feel right at home.
Just before Thanksgiving, Senator John Kennedy, no, not that one, the one who looks and sounds like Foghorn Leghorn trying to punch his way out of a bag of skin, said on Fox that you couldn't be sure it was Russia who interfered with the 2016 election. It might have been Ukraine. On November 26th on CNN, he told Chris Cuomo, I was wrong. It was Russia who tried to hack the computer. I've seen no indication that Ukraine tried to do it. Finally, a Republican with integrity. Oh, no, wait. On Sunday, December 1st, he told Chuck Todd on Meet the Press that Ukraine did meddle in the 2016 election. When asked about it 2 days later, he said he had nothing further to say on Ukraine. Probably wise. And then rushed into an elevator, telling the operator, ma'am, can you help me here? These people are trying to kill me and hurt me the entire time that I'm dying.
At the UK NATO summit, sophisticated, knowledgeable adults gathered at a Buckingham Palace reception like an episode of Frasier for drinks and chatted. Fraser, Niles, Macron, Trudeau, Princess Anne, whilst undereducated blonde dictator wannabe Boris Johnson hovered on the edges and asked why Macron was late and sniggered when it turns out it was because there'd been a presser he'd had to attend with the US delegation, which ran over for 40 unscheduled minutes because of the US delegate ranting off-piste. All this was overheard sufficiently on mic to be subtitled and social media'd. And who lives on the internet? Frasier's dad, who never gets invited to sophisticated gatherings because all he can talk about is the women he's had, getting booed at the game, and something about peaches. Anyway, he took umbrage. Mr. President, that means you didn't like it. A huff arrived and he went off in it. That's probably Huff Force 1. He then called Trudeau two-faced in a presser and then congratulated himself as he left the stage and the country when caught on the still live mic saying, that was funny when I said the guy's two-faced. You know that? Like the bully who's not managed to bully anyone, so has to tell himself he has in his pitiful loneliness. Ha, ha, ha.
Yes, as Mark said, Princess Anne was joking with the others about Trump, but it didn't stop there for the Queen's only daughter. When I saw her name trending on Twitter, I was momentarily concerned that she might have died. But no, Anne, always the royal with the least fucks to give, was trending because of an amazing viral video where Trump is greeting the Queen, Prince Charles and his wife Camilla. Anne is not in the group, and when the Queen appears to demand she come and shake hands with the interloping cockwomble, she simply stays where she is and shrugs. And I've never been prouder to live under a monarchy.
I'm surprised to hear you were concerned she might have died. You see? Yeah.
She's not the worst of them, is she?
No, true. The damned elusive De Pfeifel failed to appear on a TV debate about climate and was empty ice sculptured by Channel 4. Sadly, not a Neanderthal stooping frosted portrait monstrosity, but an elegant disc with the party logo on it, which dripped metaphorically into oblivion throughout the debate. For the party that professes to be the only one able to sort out the planet, this was a thumbing of the nose in their direction, sufficient that his dad showed up at the studio saying, "Oh, why won't you let my little boy's best friend, the unctuous Michael Gove, play with you instead?" Gove and Johnson pair were shown to the door because neither of them are party leaders, but they're barely human. Boris then pulled a Trump and threatened to review Channel 4's broadcasting licence. He did appear on the Andrew Marr show following the terrorist attack on London Bridge, but failed to say anything statesmanlike, simply gish-galloped all over the interviewer. To date, he hasn't appeared opposite Andrew Neil, his ex-boss at The Spectator at the time Boris was laughingly called a journalist, because that had involved too much scrutiny. So many people complained on an interview with Gove that Gove gave out 10 Downing Street's phone number and the switchboard was jammed in minutes. He also failed to appear tonight for a speech ahead of the latest TV head-to-head because 5 protesters showed up. And as a good 10% of the gathered throng, even that was too much scrutiny for a clown. Thursday, the 12th of December, is election day here. Let's hope he fails to show up in number 10 the next day. Or let's face it, we are going to move to the Ukraine too.
Yeah, I've heard that one of the commentators on the ITV election show in the UK is going to be Fiona Hill.
Oh,
which should be very interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I might have to tune into that.
Good. Yeah.
So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this episode. You can find the show notes at fallacioustrump.com, and if you hear Trump say something stupid and want to ask if it's a fallacy, our contact details are on the contact page.
If you think we've used the fallacy ourselves, let us know. And if you've had a good time, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can support the show on our Patreon page at patreon.com/ftrump.
If you're looking for a secret Santa gift for the Trump hater, or if you're a bit meaner the Trump lover in your life, may I recommend my book, The Best Words, The Collected Wisdom of Donald J. Trump, available now on Amazon. I've painstakingly collected every smart thing Trump has said about Muslims, North Korea, women, healthcare, Democrats, Republicans, Russia, Obama, the Electoral College, gun control, and the media. And in the final chapter, you'll find full and complete transcripts of every off-the-cuff remark Trump has made that contain coherent thoughts. In other words, the book is entirely blank, so as well as being a hilarious gag gift guaranteed to break the ice at parties, it makes a great novelty notebook. You can find it at fallaciostrump.com/thebestwords.
All music is by The Outbursts and was used with permission. So until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last word to the Donald.
That's right. Go home to mommy. Bye. Bye.